So the Power Ranking Show is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for football, basketball, baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and the easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games that are available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
And that, of course, is the voice of @Marcus_Mosher. This is the Power Rankings podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. We are doing the Power Rankings. Marcus had some really important meetings today discussing his lengthy career in pro football. And so we're coming at you.
Football, by the way.
Oh, yeah, he's back in after calling me 80 times this weekend, moaning about every possible scenario, from penalty calls to the Steelers to everything.
This is all
to the
made
Steelers.
up. It's not true.
Yeah. He did not complain about the Steelers-Rams game at least 5 times at all. Can we do an over-under on that? Yeah. So we're going to do the power rankings. We've got a lot to get to. Can you just tell me why you think this season's so dumb and you hate it before we get to the rankings?
I mean,
so we can stay on brand about complaining.
One of my overarching thoughts from the season, I think, and I've complained about this before, I think the officiating has been worse than ever. Just from inconsistencies to missed calls to having the opportunity to overturn things on the field with the eye in the sky, as the league calls it. I saw at least 3 different games this week where there was game-changing mistakes by the referees. I'm not even saying questionable calls, but like, without a doubt, mistakes by the officials, even just understanding the rules and the operations of the games. And I just don't feel like there's any kind of repercussions for them having awful calls. We see coaches get fired all the time because their teams don't win. We see players get cut and traded and released, but the officials can mess up week in and week out, and there's no penalty.
I think the Colts and Browns is the most egregious. So the one you sent me the clips, we talked about it. I mean, I think that was awful. The Amari Cooper play I could understand, but not I don't remember who the throw was.
Jones.
The PI out of bounds. Like, give me a break. And if the official was thinking, yeah, well, he could have jumped for it because the ball was way high at the boundary, the side boundary of the end zone, but the receiver wasn't to the spot yet. And it wasn't like he got held. You know, if the receiver's at the spot and he can make a leaping play on the ball and you restrict him from making a jump, I can understand that. But if you're saying, yeah, that ball would have been catchable if the receiver could jump, the receiver needs to be at that spot for that to happen. Mm-hmm. He's got to run to the spot. He's got to break down, i.e. slow up to jump. And the receiver was clearly running, trying to get to this. There's no way in the world that ball was going to be caught. Like I hated that one for sure. And I saw the spot on the Steelers-Rams. It was a little bit of a quirk. It was a terrible spot. It didn't lose the game for the Rams, but it happened with 2:13 left in the game. So it wasn't inside of 2 minutes, and Sean McVay had already burned his last time out. So he couldn't challenge it. They weren't going to do the eye in the sky because it wasn't 2 minutes. It was 2:13. And people got really upset, Marcus, because it was a running play. They had to reset and run the clock. So the clock ran from 2:13 because it was a running play and he got tackled in bounds. They had to run the clock down from 2:13 to 2 minutes. And people are saying, hey, it's inside of 2 minutes. Not when the play happened, it wasn't. It was at 2:13. So I think there was a misunderstanding of the rule book.
Well, I'll also just add really quickly in there, we see these expedited reviews across the league where, hey, they can quickly see if somebody caught the ball or it was an incompletion, and a team doesn't have to use their challenge, outside of the 2-minute mark, right? They're just trying to speed things up quicker. The NFL has the ability to do that. They just decided not to in this situation.
Right. And I do think the Kenny Pickett play was a fairly obvious spot. You just had to have the right replay. When it took a certain replay to show it, and sometimes that happens. They'll show the first replay. You're like, the second one, you're like, okay, it's a little too close to overturn that. Then they showed the third one and you could clearly see his knee hit the ground and where the ball was in his hand. And he was a full half yard short. It was not like inches. So it was a big play. The Rams could have maybe gone down and tied it, but it didn't. It certainly didn't lose the Rams the game. So we'll get to the Steelers and Rams. They're really close. in my rankings. My rankings absolutely stink because the NFL's product uh, is what it is. We don't have any good teams. So I'm going to do the best that I can here to decipher what I've been seeing. Let's start with our first one. The Panthers are the easiest one to rank on the entire power rankings. They are 32. It's an easy 32. I was high on the Cardinals earlier, but Marcus, they've had 3 bad games in a row. I do think the Bears are clearly better right now, but they're playing this young quarterback, and we don't really know what he's going to do when a team has a chance to prepare for him. And we'll see him Sunday night.
Yeah, I would say with the Cardinals, after a really nice start to the season, beating the Cowboys in week 3, they've now lost 4 straight games by double digits. It seems like other teams are starting to figure out that offense a little bit. And the schedule's really tough for them going forward. Except I think they're gonna win this week against Baltimore. So what am I talking about?
Yeah, they're not getting any offensive production right now. That's really where it is. It's not their defense that's losing these games. I can tell you that. Okay, so Carolina at 32, Arizona at 31, Chicago Bears at 30, the Packers at 29, and I think the Bears are right there, and the Broncos at 28. You could jumble these teams up. I know the Broncos got to win. I still don't think they're a good football team at all. They beat the Packers.
I think the Packers are the most disappointing team on this list. And actually, I think
Yeah.
they're the most disappointing team in the NFL. There was a lot of hype about Jordan Love going into the year, all the different weapons they
Yep.
had. This defense is supposed to be really good. And Elliot, they stink. Like they're bad on both sides of the ball. I don't know what they do well right now. This is a bad team that I could see going 5-12 pretty easily this season.
I mean, they're like you said, their defense certainly playing under expectations. People have pointed out their running backs, particularly those of you that follow fantasy, that hasn't done anything for them. Jordan Love really hasn't done much for them. Christian Watson, remember, had that great streak of, or just that run of tons of touchdowns in a limited amount of games. He was hurt at the beginning of the year. They're just not getting anything done offensively or defensively. The Broncos, ditto. I acknowledging that the Broncos did win at home by a field goal. The Giants at 27 got a big win over the Commanders. They've played 2 weeks of better football. I wouldn't call this a good team, and I'm not ready to put the Patriots there either at 26, even though they beat the Bills, because they just lost to my 25th ranked team, the Raiders, a week and a half ago, who just got blown out by the Bears playing a kid from Division II in his first career start.
Yeah, the Raiders haven't scored more than 19 points in any game this year. And they've got arguably the best receiver in the NFL in Devontae Adams, a really good number 2 receiver in Jacoby Myers, and the NFL's leading rusher from last year in Josh Jacobs. And they cannot score at all. They're bad. This is a really, really bad team.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something that you normally ask me. Of these bottom 8 teams, who's the most likely to have a chance to make the playoffs? Because usually when you've asked me this, there's one of the other NFC South teams on here besides Carolina. So I could just automatically pick that team. But my 3 NFC South teams, other ones are higher than these. So is there any team on here? I have one guess, but I want to.
I mean, the Giants are technically the closest. They're like a game and a half back of a wild card spot, but no, the Giants are not going to get a wild. I guess I would lean New England just because of Bill Belichick figuring things out, but that team is not very talented.
If they stay healthy, Mac Jones plays like he did against Buffalo. They usually have pretty good defensive game plans. They could maybe win it that way, and then running Stevenson and Elliot a lot, which is what they did against Buffalo. They were using Elliot a lot in short yardage and goal to go, using him properly. Maybe they do it that way, limiting Mac Jones's pass attempts. Either way, I'm tired of talking about these teams. Let's go to 17 through 24.
I love this group of teams so much. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So Tennessee trades Kevin Byard. It looks like give up time there. Washington, who I have at 23. So Tennessee's 24. Washington, who I have at 23, couldn't win in a game you thought they should easily be able to win. I've given up hope on them. And I think it's pretty clear that the Saints, you just can't put any faith or confidence in them. They are up and then they are totally down. They're my 22nd team.
The Titans here are. I think we're going to see the Titans be really bad the next couple of weeks. They've got a really tough schedule coming up, and I think they need to. I think they need to bottom out. I think they need to kind of reset everything. And if that's the case, maybe we see trades of Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins over the next couple of weeks.
21, 20, and 19. I've got Tampa at 21, Atlanta at 20. They played a really controversial game this week. Some craziness at the end of the game regarding substitution. Todd Bowles was livid. You remember they had a really controversial call last year in Tampa when I think it was Grady Jarrett got called for roughing the
Yep.
passer on Tom Brady. It was a bad call. And then 19, the Rams. And I'm circling these three teams because I think these three teams still have a chance. I think the Rams are the best of this group because they're getting the best quarterback play and they have the best head coach. Am I wrong here?
No, I think the Rams are the better team here, but I probably one of Tampa Bay or Atlanta is, well, I guess either team number 20, 21, or 22 is going to host a home playoff game this year. And I can't see them being favored in that game at all, no matter who they play. I think all these teams are very average. I think Atlanta probably is the best because I think they can run the ball better than anybody else in the division, but man, they have some big issues there.
Yeah, and just grabbing my AirPods case here. My good old AirPods went out on me. If you look at 18 and 17, Cincinnati and Minnesota, both of these teams had a really rough start to the season. They have kind of rebounded. I know Cincinnati didn't play this week, but they get a little healthier. They did have a big win against Seattle. You got to give them that. Their offense got a little bit back on track against Arizona a few weeks ago. And then Minnesota seems to be back on track without Justin Jefferson. When Jefferson comes back with Addison, if Cousins can keep up the way he played against San Francisco, would you trust them more than Cincinnati to get into the playoffs?
Yes, I do. First of all, Cincinnati is just in a way tougher division with Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh all having better records already. All three of those teams won last week when the Bengals were on a bye. I also think this Bengals offense is kind of broken, and I don't think it's just because Joe Burrow's calf was bothering him. They're not creating explosive plays. They look really slow. Meanwhile, Minnesota is getting great production from TJ Hawkinson. Jordan Addison looks like a star, and Justin Jefferson's going to be back in a few weeks. This is looking like one of the best offenses in the league. I'm kind of buying the Vikings right now.
Are you buying my Kirk Cousins MVP pick?
No, but would it shock you if this is Kirk Cousins' best year of his career? I've already seen him play two incredible games this year. The Thursday game against Philadelphia, which they lost, he was outstanding.
Yep.
And then this game against San Francisco might have been the best of his career.
Weren't there a couple big drops by the Vikings in that game against Philadelphia?
Oh, yeah, and that was the game that they lost two left tackles. They had multiple injuries inside, and Kirk Cousins just kept on dealing.
Right. Let's look at 16 through 9 to see some of the teams that Minnesota is going to have to get through, particularly my number 9 team. But let's start at the top here, at least the top of this page. If you're following along on Believe, obviously, if you're listening to us, I've got the Chargers at 16. I've got Pittsburgh at 15, the Jets at 14, the Colts at 13. Let's go with that 4-pack right there. Good luck picking between these teams. It seems like Pittsburgh's the most plucky of the teams, and I would say the Colts are the most unlucky. The Chargers played tough against Dallas, but at some point you got to win these kind of games, and they're just bad at doing it. In some ways, I kind of like the Jets because the Jets defensively, I think the Jets can run the ball. I think they can win some ugly football games. But if you take the Chargers, the Steelers, the Jets, and the Colts, all AFC teams, all going to be trying to get that 7th wild card, let's say, I think the Colts have consistently played the best of this group.
So the Colts can run the ball, the best of these 4 teams. The Jets probably have the best overall defense. The Steelers create the most splash plays and the most takeaways. What do the Chargers do well after 7 games?
The Chargers have one clear advantage over these teams. And when I say clear, this is a gulf. It's Justin Herbert versus Kenny Pickett, who I'm not as hard on Kenny Pickett as Marcus is. I think he does make big plays when he has to. You got to give him a little bit of a clutch factor. You just wish he didn't stink up the joint sometimes. Zach Wilson, I don't obviously feel the same way about. Gardner Minshew, I think, has had some nice moments this year. Obviously, he's not the answer, but the Colts, as you've put it, have supported their quarterback all the way around the best of these teams. I don't know. It's hard with the Chargers, though. They're not doing anything else well. And
Justin Herbert, don't do anything well. Great. They're not coached well. They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. They don't create consistent pass rush. And Justin Herbert's having to make ridiculous throws just to get them, to midway, across the field. So I think we got the Chargers game, Chargers Bears Sunday Night Football this week. If the Chargers lose that game, I wonder if we're going to see a coaching change. You cannot lose that game if you're the Chargers.
It'll be interesting to see how our number 12 team, Houston, comes out of the bye. They have shown some potential this year. I really wish they would have pulled out the game at Atlanta. I think that would have made a really big difference in their season so far. Cleveland at 11's got an interesting conundrum. What do you make of the Deshaun Watson situation or the rumor mill?
Yeah, so a lot of people didn't think he was going to play last week. He practiced on Thursday and Friday, and I guess looked really, really good. And then on Sunday, he was 1 of 5, and it was just clear that he had no velocity. He got hit really hard on his final play. It was a play that was intercepted, eventually called back. It was cleared from concussion protocol, and Kevin Stefanski just didn't put him back in. And I think what the issue was is he's dealing with some kind of shoulder injury that I don't think is it's not as significant that he can't play through it, but it's clearly hindering him. But it's not necessarily something that they feel like he has to go get fixed right now, but they probably does. And I know I'm being really vague here because I think the Browns are being vague because they don't know either. It's one of these really weird situations where do you just have him go get a surgery now and reset for the 2024 season, or do you give him a 3-week break, a 4-week break, and kind of assess when we get back to Thanksgiving to see where the Browns are at and how he's feeling?
Well, if it was a rotator cuff, I think they would know that it's probably a torn labrum. Torn labrums are really tricky. They don't always show up on MRIs. You could have a torn labrum right now and not even know that you do. They're not always painful. But when you're playing pro football and you're throwing, it gets inflamed. Also, torn labrum sometimes can be so small that's not necessarily something you want to go in with arthroscopic surgery and fix. But normally NFL players get their labrums fixed, but they will play a lot of games with the torn labrum. That's why I'm guessing that's what that is. The Jags at 10, the Lions at 9. So the Jags Saints was like Turd Bowl 3000.
Yep.
That's what I mean. Thursday Night Football in the year 3000. We're all going to be watching Jags Saints and changing the channel. They got an ugly win. They won, but late in the game, it looked like the Saints had a chance. If Moreau doesn't drop that ball, we're having a different conversation. Yeah. Lions at 9, the ugliest performance. I don't even know what to say about this team. This is the kind of game you throw the game film in the trash, proverbially, and just move on to the next week, because I don't know what you're going to learn from losing whatever it was, 38-7, or I don't even remember what the score was. It was awful.
38-6.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Jacksonville really quickly. The AFC is so wide open, and we're going to get to this in a little bit. The Chiefs are the best team in the conference. I'm not spoiling anything. Or maybe I am. I don't know. I think the Chiefs are still the best team in the conference, right? And then every other team has a massive flaw, and basically a fatal flaw that could do them in. I think the Jacksonville is probably the most balanced team, but I don't trust them at all. And a perfect example is you've got 10 days rest coming up. You're playing an inferior team in Pittsburgh here on Sunday. And you and I we don't trust Jacksonville to go into Pittsburgh and beat them. And they should. Like, they're just so much more talented. They've got a better quarterback. They've got better offensive line, better receivers. I think if Jacksonville is going to become a real contender in the AFC, this is the type of game you've got to win on the road.
The NFL is so close right now. It's such a league of 8-1 teams that wonky plays lose you a game. And for whatever reason, Steelers players, number one, they play for Mike Tomlin. Number two, they capitalize on wonky plays. They just do. They capitalize. I mean, TJ Watt's interception, that was a great play, great read. So I hate to call that a wonky play, but the spot and everything else, yeah.
It's 3 missed kicks. Yep.
What would you say?
Brett Maher missed 3 kicks.
Oh, yeah.
That's why he got released today by the Rams.
Got to give the Steelers credit, though. They do capitalize on that when you make a mistake. You just, like you said, the Jags should go in there and handle them, and it's probably not going to happen. Let's go to our top 8 teams, what we think are our top 8 teams. I wonder if I've charged my AirPods up enough to use them. We'll find out. Seahawks at number 8. This is a team that beat the Cardinals at home. I don't want to get super excited about that. I still don't know how good these Seahawks are, but given the way they've played, I think this is kind of where you have to have them.
Yeah, I still like the Seahawks team. I still think there's a good bit of distance between them and the top 3 teams in the NFC, but they're a good team. I actually enjoy watching them. They're one of the few teams that I sit down on Sundays and I'm like, "Oh, I wanna watch the Seahawks." They're a good time.
I'm glad you feel that way. Uh,
You don't like watching the Seattle team?
Not really, but you know what? I'll take watching Seattle over our number 7 team any day of the week.
I
Great. Yippee. Baltimore won 38-6. I guarantee you they're not going to cover the spread against the Cardinals. They're going to play the cruddiest game against the Cardinals because this is what the Ravens do. They play a great game where they dominate, and then they just play sloppy football. They play mediocre football every time you think they're good. Baltimore is the quintessential 6 seed. That's what they are. They're a 6 seed that's going to get bounced. It's really hard. Put together 4 great games in a row. Give me 3 great games in a row, and I'll get behind them. But I just can't get overly excited about the Lions game unless they go into Arizona and handle their business, which I don't have faith that they're going to do. And I tell you what, with Buffalo, it's kind of the same deal this year. The Bills are not having a good season. You could easily put the Ravens and Seahawks ahead of the Bills on this list. I've just seen more consistent good football over the Bills over the last 4 or 5 years. They usually bounce back from these kinds of games, but this is a faith ranking here at 6.
I thought they were going to bounce back after the way they played against the Giants on Sunday Night Football a week ago. I mean, they should have lost that game. Let me take that back. They very easily could have lost that game if it wasn't for a couple beneficial calls late and a couple non-calls. I thought against New England, a team that they know really well, that they were going to come out and just dominate them. Didn't happen. New England ran the ball right down their throats. Buffalo's got some major, major issues on both sides of the ball.
And Josh Allen's missing throws. He missed Diggs multiple times in this game. He's not getting any big plays downfield. He's getting a lot of short stuff. I'm with you there. But what do you make of Dallas at 5? They were on a bye, so we can't say a lot about them. But they got blown out. Then they had the big win against the Chargers. I'm curious to see how they play against a spunky Rams team. I could definitely see if they don't get to Matt Stafford, I could see the Cowboys taking a home L, but I think they will because the Rams line is so bad. We'll talk about that more in our picks podcast. The 49ers at 4, Marcus is ecstatic that they lost to the Vikings because they hammered the Cowboys a few weeks ago. Do you have any problem with the Niners and Cowboys ranked here where they are?
You're saying, like, should the Cowboys be ranked ahead of the Niners? Is that what you're asking me?
No,
No,
but am I too high on both teams? I just don't know who I would move ahead of Dallas at 5 and the 49ers at 4. Would you put Seattle or Baltimore or Buffalo ahead of these teams? I wouldn't.
I would keep San Fran at 2, in my opinion. I would have them ahead of both AFC teams.
Yeah, well, we're not there yet. Obviously, Dallas is hard to move. They didn't play. Kansas City, with this horrible graphic that Marcus inflicts on me every week, is at number 3, and Miami at number 2. Now, it would be really easy to put Kansas City over Miami because Miami lost at Philadelphia. But the Chiefs played at home. I think the Chiefs still have some major flaws. Offensively, if you watch that game, they had a really hard time in the second half. All their production was really first half related. Mm-hmm. They're still too dependent, I think, on Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes to make plays, whereas the Dolphins, I feel like, are a well-rounded team who just went into Philadelphia with a ton of injuries. And then in the third quarter, man, they made that game really, really competitive, even though they were the walking wounded.
It's true. They were without Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard. Jalen Waddle got banged up in this game. No Devin Achane. So, you can understand why that game got out of control a little bit. The Chiefs are interesting to me because there is nothing smooth about this offense. Everything has to be freestyling. Mahomes running outside the pocket, throwing across his body, scrambling on 3rd and 15. And that's great. But I wonder when they play better defenses in the playoffs, who else can they rely on? What happens if Travis Kelce has an ankle injury and he's not quite 100%? Do they have somebody else that they can rely on to get open on 3rd and 9? And I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, I don't know who coach of the year is right now. I mean, you could probably, give Mike McDaniel some love. You could probably give D'Amico Ryan some love, maybe even Pete Carroll. I don't know where you would go. But if we're talking assistant coach of the year, Steve Spagnuolo, hands down to me. That the way Kansas City's defense has played this year, they shut the Chargers down in the second half. Miami has shown me more so far. That's why I have them where they are. Let's go to the number one team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Do I think the Eagles are a great team? I don't. I think they are playing the best right now off of one game because that's all I have to go off of. The 49ers have lost 2 weeks in a row when, frankly, they haven't looked good. Kansas City, you just detailed all their problems. Everything's a struggle offensively. And Miami is so banged up. We're not seeing the regular Miami Dolphins. The Cowboys were on a bye, and I'm certainly not putting Buffalo, Baltimore, or Seattle this high. So Philadelphia, on the basis of circling the wagons, playing a good game on Sunday night, recovering. And it also took the Eagles making colossal mistakes to lose to the Jets. And if I need a final point, the beauty of the uniform. I mean, come on. If you don't like the Eagles uniform Sunday night, you don't like football.
So this is what Elliot does. He was all in on the 49ers a couple of weeks ago. Now the Eagles are his favorite team. He loves rooting for this Eagles team. No, the Eagles roster is the best in the NFL. I mean, you look at their team, where is their hole? Like, where is there a weak spot on this team? And they continue to add players like Kevin Byard, who, as you mentioned, they added Julio Jones as their number 3 receiver. I'm a little bit more dubious on that one, but it's the best team in the NFL. They were the best team in the NFL for most of last year. I would be shocked if they're not hosting an NFC Championship game this season.
And if you guys aren't familiar with Kevin Byard, he was a really good safety for the Titans for years in the AFC. He's not quite the older veteran that Julio Jones is. Julio Jones came out in the 2011 draft. Byard, 15, 16?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So younger player. And it was a position that, quite frankly, the Eagles needed to fill. That's another reason they're at number one. Personnel-wise, 22 on 22, they're better than what you have. Even though they've, dilly-dallied around in some of their games this year. They didn't do it against Miami. The only thing I was surprised about in that game was that their offensive line got beat. I haven't seen Philadelphia's offensive line get beat like that in a long time. But all that said, I give you the floor for the final thought here.
Actually, I'm going to turn it around to you. We've got like 2 minutes left. Any thoughts on this Taylor Swift stuff in the NFL? Do you like it? Do you dislike it?
Jeez, you would ask me that. I'll just say this. I got asked about this the other day. Look, I'm all whatever. People date. Whoever wants to date. Have a great time. But, I also know that a lot of celebrities are more than happy with the ancillary benefit they get from these kind of couplings. The increase in Twitter followers, the increase in coverage. A friend of mine who loves Taylor Swift, asked me, why is Taylor Swift always on camera when they leave the game? Like, couldn't she find a private exit out of that stadium? Couldn't her people? And I said, absolutely, 100%. The Chiefs could help her with that. So why isn't that choice being made? Because this is all free publicity. And I have nothing against Taylor Swift. I actually admire anyone that can play an instrument or write their own music, because that seems to be like not a thing in the music industry. But people often wonder how celebrities get away with so much or elevate to certain jobs. I'll just leave it at that. And this is how, because you do 55 cutaways of them. It's such a sad state that we'd rather watch Taylor Swift jumping around with a secret handshake with Brittany Mahomes than we would actually getting a breakdown of how the Chiefs scored a touchdown on that play.
I will say my sister, who is a massive Swiftie, called me yesterday, and she's like, how come the Chiefs weren't using Travis Kelce in motion in the red zone? And I just hung up the phone on her because I knew she was trying to get under my skin.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's, people do. They wonder why, what America's all about. People in Europe. I was just in Europe, and we are just so obsessed with celebrity that people are watching Chiefs games just to see her jumping around and celebrating in a Chiefs sweater. It's not like she's singing the national anthem. Am I missing something?
This is fantastic. This is the best final word that we've ever had.
Okay. I have nothing against Taylor Swift, though. I do respect Taylor Swift. So, all right. That's our power rankings for today. If you want to hear more about the Cowboys and their lack of celebrity status, please listen to Locked On Cowboys. Marcus does that with Landon McCool. Give Landon a follow on Twitter. Marcus also does Dynasty for the same network, Locked On Network, and covers the Raiders for USA Today Raiders Wire, where he's very, very gung-ho on the Raiders prospects this year. He also writes for the 33rd Team. You can check out his work there. Now that I'm done promoting him, you can also hit his Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. I'm at Harrison NFL. And we really appreciate you guys very much. We'll talk to y'all when we do our picks. Take care.